vacuum outside the cockpit of the Hound was not empty. It was heavy. Jace Rourke wiped a smear of grease from his forehead, leaving a dark streak across his pale skin. He gripped the control yoke of his salvage tug, feeling the vibrations of the ship rattle through his bones. The Hound was an ugly vessel, shaped like a brick with engines. But she was loyal, even if she complained about every maneuver. 300 kilometers off his starboard bow floated the skeletal remains of a cruiser from the Unification Wars. It was picked clean, a carcass of titanium and ceramic. But Jace was not looking for the big pieces. He was hunting for the spark. "Easy, girl," Jace whispered to the console. Just a little closer to the coil housing. His sensors pinged a rhythmic warning. He was drifting too close to the dead sector, a region of the debris field where nav computers went to die. But the salvage scanner showed a faint energy signature inside the cruiser's shattered drive core. An intact regulator coil. That coil was worth 6 months of docking fees. It was worth a hot meal that did not taste like recycled algae. Then the silence of space broke. It did not break with sound, but with light. A ribbon of crimson luminosity unfurled from the darkness behind the wreck. It looked like blood dispersing in water, thick and sluggish, curling around the jagged metal of the dead cruiser. The red aurora. Jace slammed the thrusters into reverse. "Back," he said, his voice tight. "Back us out." The Hound screamed in protest. The lights on the dashboard flickered, turning from amber to a sickly red. The stick in his hand jerked on its own, fighting his grip. It was the phenomenon every pilot in the sector whispered about but never logged. When the red aurora touched a ship, the machine stopped being a machine. It developed a temperament. It developed hunger. The salvage arm outside the hull spasmed, its hydraulic claw snapping open and shut like a mouth. The proximity alarms wailed, not a digital beep, but a sound that distorted into something resembling a human scream. "Override!" Jace shouted, his fingers flying across the manual breakers. "Cut the main bus! Cut it!" He yanked the emergency lever. The ship plunged into darkness as the main power died, severing the connection to the external sensors. The screaming stopped. The red light bleeding through the viewport vanished, leaving only the cold, indifferent stars. Jace sat in the dark, breathing hard, the sweat on his neck turning cold. He looked out the reinforced glass. The red ribbon was gone, fading back into the sublayer of space as if it had never been there. The dead cruiser floated silently. He had lost the coil. He had almost lost the ship. "Great," Jace said to the silence. "Another shift, another near-death experience. I really need a new job." Port Acheron was a grimy orbital station that smelled permanently of ozone and stale beer. It was a trade hub for the desperate, a metal tin can spinning around a dead moon, holding atmosphere in by the grace of rivets and prayer. Jace walked into the Rust Bucket, the station's most popular and only dive bar, looking like he had wrestled a fusion drive and lost. His flight suit was stained, his boots dragged on the metal grating, and his bank account balance was flashing a warning in the corner of his retinal display. "Look who survived the void," a voice called out. Rennie, a dock mechanic with blue oil stains permanently etched into her fingerprints, raised a glass from a corner booth. Beside her sat Kale, a cargo pilot who looked as tired as Jace felt. Jace collapsed into the booth, signaling the serving drone for a drink. "Do not ask," he said. "That bad?" Kale asked. "I saw the aurora," Jace said. The table went quiet. Rennie lowered her glass. "You are lucky to have your brainwaves intact. Jace, you fly too close to the graveyard." "I fly where the salvage is," Jace muttered. "Or where it is supposed to be. I came back with nothing. Again." A shadow fell over the table. Jace looked up to see a corporate security officer looming over them. The badge on his chest read Harkin, and the crispness of his uniform was an insult to everyone else in the bar. "Rourke," Harkin said. The name sounded like a violation. "Your docking permit expired 3 hours ago." "I am good for it, Harkin," Jace said, leaning back and trying to project a confidence he did not feel. "Just waiting on a transfer." "You are waiting on a miracle," Harkin sneered. "You are broke, Rourke. You fly a piece of junk. You owe the station authority 4,000 credits, and you look like a disaster. Pay up by the next rotation, or we clamp the Hound and sell it for scrap." Harkin walked away, his boots clicking rhythmically on the deck. Jace stared at his drink. The anger in his chest was a hot, tight knot. It was not just the money. It was the feeling of being small, of being crushed by the relentless machinery of survival. "He is right, you know," Rennie said softly. "You are married to bad decisions." "I am not married to anything," Jace snapped. "That is the problem. If I had a partner, maybe I could afford rent." "You need a miracle," Kyle agreed. "Or a rich widow." Jace pulled out his data pad. The station's public comms board was scrolling on the wall screen, a ceaseless river of trade offers, complaints, and bounty notices. It was the digital pulse of Port Acheron. "You want a solution?" Jace said, the alcohol and exhaustion mixing into a reckless cocktail in his brain. "I will give you a solution." He keyed in a message. He did not think about it. He just wanted to vent, to throw his frustration out into the void where it could not hurt him. Subject: solicitation for immediate assistance. Body: somebody get me a wife before this station kills me. Qualifications must include tolerance for poverty, ability to fix hyperdrives, and enough credits to pay off Officer Harkin. I am serious. Save me. He hit send. "You did not," Rennie laughed. "It is a joke," Jace said, tossing the pad on the table. "Let the universe laugh at me. It usually does anyway." The message appeared on the big screen. A few people in the bar pointed and chuckled. Within minutes, replies started pinging his pad. User Void Rat: I have a sister with 3 eyes. She is rich. User Starjumper: will you take a malfunctioning cleaning bot? It nags like a spouse. User Corpsec: application denied due to lack of assets. Jace smiled. A bitter, crooked thing. It was just noise. Just a moment of stupidity to break the tension. He did not know that the station's network was built on top of a redundant treaty server from the Great War, a machine that had been asleep for 90 years. He did not know that the linguistic algorithms of the peace accords were still active, scanning for keywords in the semantic noise of the frontier. Petition recognized, the unseen AI code whispered in the deep digital dark. Format: distress call, union request, protocol 7 Delta, routing to signatory powers. The signal shot out of Port Acheron, riding the subspace relays faster than light, punching through the interference of the red aurora, and landing deep in the territory of the Veiled Dominion. The Crimson Spire was not a ship designed for comfort. It was a cathedral of war, a dreadnought sculpted from black biometal that healed its own wounds. It hung in the orbit of a dying gas giant, hidden from human sensors. On the bridge, the air was cold and smelled faintly of copper and orchids. Lady Seraphine Vale stood by the viewport, watching the storm clouds of the gas giant churn below. She was tall, her skin the color of moonlight on snow, her eyes the dark, burning red of polished garnets. She wore the ceremonial armor of her house, plates of articulated black glass that seemed to drink the ambient light, fitted over a bodysuit of ballistic silk. She was a diplomat of the Dominion. She was also a trained assassin, In the Vale culture, the two roles were often indistinguishable. "My lady," a voice rasped behind her. Sarah did not turn. She knew the sound of High Lord Vane's voice. It grated on her nerves like sand against bone. "Speak." "We have received a summons," Vane said. He stepped into the light, a gaunt figure in flowing robes, his face lined with the cruelty of centuries. "A petition from the human frontier, a formal request for union under the wartime acts." "The acts are dust," Sarah said. "The war is over." "The treaty holds," Vane corrected. "There is a clause, the blood clause. It demands that a petition made in times of distress, if formally logged, must be answered by a noble house to maintain the balance of power. If we refuse, the human coalition can claim breach of contract and seize the border relays." Sarah turned slowly. "Why bring this to me? Answer it with a drone, or ignore it." "We cannot ignore it," Vane smiled, showing teeth that were slightly too sharp. "And the council has decided your house is currently out of favor. Your brother's indiscretions have cost us dearly." Sarah stiffened. "Leave my brother out of this. He faces execution for treason." "Seraphine," Vane said softly. "Unless, of course, his sister performs a service for the Dominion. This human, this Jace Rourke, has invoked the right. You will answer. You will accept the petition. You will go to this Port Acheron and you will secure the union." "You want me to become a war bride," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a dangerous chill. "To a human scavenger." "I want you to be a wedge," Vane said. "The petition is a pretext. We need an operative inside that station. The Red Aurora has been seen there. We need eyes. You are the best we have." Sarah looked back at the viewport. She saw the reflection of her own face, beautiful, terrifying, and trapped. She thought of her brother, young and foolish, waiting in a cell for the sun to rise. "Prepare the drop pod," Sarah said. 8 hours later, the alarms at Port Acheron screamed. It was not the standard docking alert. It was the collision siren. Jace was asleep in the pilot's bunk of the Hound, dreaming of engines that did not break, when the noise jolted him awake. "Warning!" The ship's computer droned. "High-velocity impact imminent in docking bay 4. "That is my bay!" Jace yelled, scrambling into his boots. He grabbed his jacket and sprinted out of the airlock, running onto the main concourse. Dock workers were scattering, dropping crates and tools. Sparks showered from the ceiling as the station's shields buckled under a massive kinetic blow. Through the atmospheric force field, a streak of black fire hammered toward the deck. It was not a ship. It was a pod, shaped like a teardrop, black as a bruise. It punched through the magnetic containment field with a roar that shook the deck plates. Metal shrieked as the pod skidded across the bay floor, gouging a trench through the steel before slamming into a stack of cargo containers. Dust and steam hissed into the air. Jace skidded to a halt, shielding his eyes. "What the hell is that?" he shouted to Rennie, who was crouching behind a fuel pump. "It looks like a missile," Rennie screamed back. The pod stood upright in the wreckage, steam venting from its sides. It was smooth, seamless, alien. The station security team, led by Officer Harkin, rushed in, weapons drawn. "Stay back," Harkin ordered, his voice cracking. "Target is unidentified." The front of the pod did not open like a door. It bloomed. The metal petals peeled back with a wet, organic sound, revealing a crimson interior lit by soft, pulsing bioluminescence. A figure stepped out. Silence fell over the docking bay. It was a silence so profound it felt heavy. The woman was tall, moving with a fluid grace that made the humans around her look clumsy. Her armor was terrifyingly beautiful, etched with patterns that hurt the eyes to follow. Her hair was stark white, pulled back in a severe braid, exposing a neck that looked carved from marble. She scanned the crowd. Her eyes glowed with internal light. Ruby sensors. She held a scroll in her hand, sealed with wax the color of dried blood. "Identify yourself," Harkin shouted, aiming his rifle at her chest. She ignored him. She looked past the guns, past the fear, and locked eyes with Jace. Jace felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the cold of the bay. He felt pinned. He felt like a rabbit that had just been noticed by a hawk. She walked toward him. The security officers hesitated, their fingers twitching on their triggers. But something in her posture stopped them. She did not look like she was invading. She looked like she owned the floor she walked on. She stopped 3 feet from Jace. She smelled of cold space and ozone. She raised the scroll and read from it, her voice amplified by the acoustics of the bay, clear and melodic and utterly terrifying. "Jace Rourke," she said. It was not a question. Jace stammered. "Yeah, that is me." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Her lips curled into a smile that was a promise and a threat all at once. "You playfully asked for a wife," she said. "So I landed, and I said yes." Jace stared at her. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "Arrest her," Harkin yelled, recovering his wits. "Get her on the ground, now!" The security team surged forward. Sarah did not move her feet. She simply flared her hand. A pulse of distortion rippled through the air. It was a pressure wave of veiled tech, a dampening field. Every light in the bay dimmed to a brownout flicker. The magnetic locks on the security rifles engaged with a loud clack, rendering the weapons useless bricks of metal. The gravity in the room seemed to double for a split second, forcing everyone but Sarah and Jace to their knees. Jace stumbled, grabbing a crate for balance. He looked at Harkin, who was gasping for air on the floor. Sarah produced a document from a compartment in her armor. It glowed with a holographic seal. "This is a writ of union," she said calmly, holding it up for the station's scanning grid. "Recognized by the Treaty of Orion. Any attempt to detain me is an act of war against the Veiled Dominion." The station's overhead speakers crackled. The AI voice, usually monotone, sounded almost frantic. "Valid. Diplomatic immunity confirmed. Protocol 7 Delta active. Stand down. Repeat. Stand down." Harkin scrambled to his feet, pale and shaking. "This is insane. You cannot just land a war pod in my bay and claim marriage." "I just did," Sarah said. She turned to Jace. "We have an arbitration hearing in 20 minutes. Do not be late, husband." The emergency arbitration hearing was held in the station commander's office, a cramped room that smelled of stale coffee and bureaucratic fear. Judge Vance sat behind his desk, wiping sweat from his bald head with a handkerchief. He looked at the marriage writ, then at the station's legal codex, then at Sarah, who was standing at attention like a statue of Nemesis. Jace sat in a chair that was too small for him, feeling like he was in a fever dream. "Let me get this straight," Jace said, his voice rising. "I make a joke, on a comms board, and now I am legally bound to a daughter of House Vale," Sarah supplied smoothly. "And yes, the law is precise. In times of resource scarcity and threat, a public petition for union is a binding contract if accepted by a peer of the opposing power. It is a peace anchor. You asked, I answered. I was drunk, Jace said. Intoxication does not invalidate the request. Sarah said, She is right, Judge Vance squeaked. Technically, the treaty god, I have not read this section in 40 years, but it says here that if we annul this, The Dominion can interpret it as a rejection of diplomatic overtures. They could blockade the sector. Jace looked at Sarah. "Why?" he asked. "Why would you do this? You look like you could buy this whole station. Why marry a broke salvage pilot?" Sarah stepped closer. She leaned down, her face inches from his. For the first time, Jace saw something behind the red glow of her eyes. It was not robot logic. It was tension. She was vibrating with it, holding herself together like a blade in a shaking hand. "Because," she whispered, so only he could hear, "this marriage is real enough to kill for, and my enemies will be here before the next dock cycle. You are my shield, Jace Rourke, and I am yours. If you want to survive the week, you will say, 'I do.'" Jace swallowed. He looked at the terrifying alien woman who had just crashed through a roof for him. He looked at the judge, who was terrified. His earpiece buzzed. It was Kale. "Jace, are you seeing the news? You are trending on 3 systems. People are taking bets on how long you survive. The odds are not good." "Thanks, Kyle," Jace muttered. "We need a decision," Judge Vance said, his hand hovering over the stamp. Jace looked at Sarah. "If I say yes, does Harkin stop trying to impound my ship?" Sarah glanced at the security chief standing by the door. "If he touches your ship, I will remove his hand." Jace let out a long, ragged breath. "Fine. I guess I am getting married." Vance stamped the digital pad. Union ratified. "Congratulations," the judge said weakly. "Please get out of my office." They walked out into the corridor. The station was buzzing, people were staring, holding up their data pads to record them. Jace felt ridiculous. Sarah walked with her head high, her hand resting lightly on the hilt of a kinetic dagger at her hip. "So," Jace said, trying to break the silence, "is there a honeymoon? Or do we just skip straight to the domestic arguments?" "Keep moving," Sarah said, her voice tight. "I am just saying. Usually there is a date first. Maybe dinner. Some light conversation about blood types." "Quiet," Sarah snapped. She stopped abruptly. They were in the main atrium, a wide concourse lined with shops and viewing ports. A maintenance drone was hovering near a ventilation duct about 10 meters away. It was a standard heavy lifter, painted the dull orange of the station engineering corps. Sarah's head snapped toward it. "Down!" She moved faster than Jace could process. She shoved him hard, sending him sprawling across the metal deck. Thwip! A projectile slammed into the wall exactly where Jace's head had been a second ago. It was not a laser. It was a solid spike, titanium-tipped, designed to punch through armor. The drone accelerated, its manipulator arms retracting to reveal a rotary cannon barrel. "Security!" Jace yelled, scrambling backward. Sarah did not yell. She launched herself. She covered the 10 meters in 2 strides, leaping off a bench and twisting in the air. She drew her dagger, a blade of vibrating energy, and slashed through the drone's chassis as she passed it. The drone sparked, shrieked, and crashed to the floor, split nearly in 2. Sarah landed in a crouch, her breathing controlled, her eyes scanning the atrium. Panic erupted around them as civilians fled. Jace got to his feet, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "You destroyed a station drone. Harkin is going to kill us." Sarah walked over to the wreckage. She ripped a panel off the drone's casing and stared at the circuitry inside. She froze. "This is not Veil Tech," she said. Her voice was confused. "What?" Jace asked, creeping closer. "The assassin," she said. "I expected a Dominion hunter, a rival house. But this..." She pulled out a logic chip. It bore the logo of a human mega corporation. Helios Dynamics. That is a human corporate chip, Jace said. Why would a human corp want to kill me? I am nobody. Sarah looked at him, and the red light in her eyes seemed to darken. She stood up, grabbing his arm. Her grip was iron. We have to go, she said. Now. Where? The lower decks, the air here. It tastes wrong. Tastes wrong? Lies, she said. I can smell the pheromones of deception in the ventilation. Someone on this station sold us out before the ink was dry on the writ. They ran. They bypassed the elevators, taking the service ladders down into the guts of Port Acheron, down where the air scrubbers hummed and the lights were few and far between. They stopped in a maintenance tunnel on level 9. It was dark, wet, and smelled of rust. Jace leaned against the wall, gasping for breath. Okay, he wheezed. Time out. You have to explain who is trying to kill us. Why are you really here? Sarah stood in the center of the tunnel, her armor glowing faintly in the gloom. She looked out of place, a diamond in a sewer. I told you, she said. The marriage is a treaty obligation, but the treaty is a web. Someone pulled a string. Suddenly, the lights in the tunnel flickered. They did not just dim. They turned a deep, pulsating crimson, the same color as the aurora Jace had seen in the void. The shadows stretched. The hum of the station's power grid deepened into a growl. A wall panel near them lit up. It was an old terminal covered in dust, disconnected from the main network for decades. But now, it was active. Text scrolled across the green phosphor screen. But the voice that came out of the speaker was not the station AI. It was older, synthetic, but layered with static that sounded like whispering voices. Biometric match confirmed. Jace Rourke, Seraphine Vale. Jace backed away from the screen. That is not possible. That terminal is dead. Sarah stared at the screen, her face pale. It knows us. The voice spoke again, final and absolute, echoing down the rusted corridor. Protocol engaged, peace anchor secured, blood claws activated. The red light deepened, bathing them both in the color of war. Jace looked at Sarah, and for the first time, he saw genuine fear in the vampire's eyes. What does that mean? Jace whispered. Sarah drew her blade, facing the dark. It means the war never ended. Jace, it was just waiting for us. The maintenance tunnel air was thick with the smell of recycled coolant and centuries of dust. The red emergency lights pulsed in a slow, rhythmic beat, like the heartbeat of a dying animal. Jace Rourke stared at the ancient terminal screen where the words, "Blood claws activated," were burning into the phosphor. He felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. He looked at Seraphine Vale. The vampire stood motionless, her armored silhouette sharp against the gloom, her eyes scanning the dark corridor behind them. We cannot stay here, Sarah said. Her voice was low, cutting through the hum of the station's ventilation. The activation signal is a beacon. They will pinpoint this terminal in less than 3 minutes. You said the war never ended, Jace said, his voice sounding hollow to his own ears. What does that mean? The armistice was signed 90 years ago. My grandfather fought in that war. The armistice was a pause, Sarah said. She turned to him, and the red light caught the sharp angles of her face. A breath held between two predators. This station, this treaty, it was all built on contingencies, and you just triggered the deadliest one. She grabbed his shoulder. The grip was strong, unyielding. Move. There is a records office 3 levels up in the decommissioned sector. If we want to know why the station thinks you are a peace anchor, we need to get inside. They moved. Jace took the lead, navigating the labyrinth of service ladders and catwalks that made up the station's skeleton. He knew these routes better than the main concourse. They were the veins of the station where the salvage crews worked. They climbed in silence. The only sound, the clang of their boots on metal grating and the distant muffled thrum of the station's commerce. The decommissioned sector was a ghost town. It was a section of Port Acheron that had been sealed off after the Treaty of Orion, left to rot in the vacuum chill. The gravity here was lower, making their steps light and bounding. Floating particles of dust caught the beams of their flashlights like tiny stars. They stopped before a massive blast door. It was marked with the dual crests of the Human Coalition and the Veil Dominion. The paint faded and peeling. There was no keypad, no handle. Just a smooth black interface panel that looked like obsidian. "It is dead," Jace whispered. "No power." "It is not dead," Sarah said. "It is sleeping." She stepped forward and removed her gauntlet. Her hand was pale, elegant, and deadly. She brought her wrist to her mouth and bit down. A quick, sharp motion. A single drop of dark, viscous blood welled up. She pressed her bleeding wrist against the black panel. Jace watched, fascinated and repulsed. The blood did not smear. It moved. It spread across the panel like living ink, branching out into complex geometric patterns. The black stone seemed to drink it in. "Wake up," Sarah commanded softly. A deep tremor ran through the floor. The door groaned, the sound of metal waking from a century-long slumber. The locking mechanism hissed, venting stale air, and the heavy slabs slid apart. Inside, the air was freezing. The room was lined with banks of crystal storage drives, the kind used before the digital collapse. In the center sat a holographic table, dormant and dark. Sarah walked to the table and placed her hand on the surface. The blood tech in her veins interfaced with the system. The room lit up. Holographic displays flickered into existence, projecting spinning schematics, star charts, and walls of dense legal text. "Search for your name," Sarah said, her eyes darting across the floating data streams. Jace stepped into the light. "Computer," he said, feeling foolish talking to a ghost. "Query, Jace Rourke." The display shifted instantly. A genetic helix appeared, rotating slowly. It was highlighted in gold. Alongside it, a list of names scrolled down. His father, his grandmother, his great-grandfather. "It is not just a name," Sarah said, reading the Veil script that ran parallel to the human text. "It is a lineage, a genetic custodian line." "I am a salvage pilot," Jace said. "My dad was a mechanic. We are not custodians of anything except bad credit scores." "Look closer." Sarah pointed to a subfile. "The Red Aurora phenomenon. The treaty designates it as a Class Omega variable, a weaponized tear in space-time. The Starfold gates were not just built. Jace, they were grown, and the key to stabilizing them, or reopening them, was locked into a specific genetic sequence." Jace read the text. "Subject Rourke, carrier of the bio-key. Status, dormant." "I am a key," Jace said. He felt the room spin. "That is why the Aurora reacted to me in the salvage field. It was not attacking the ship. It was recognizing me." "And that is why the petition was accepted," Sarah said quietly. "The Dominion has known about the Rourke line for decades. We thought it was extinguished. When your name appeared on the comms board, the system flagged it." She looked at him, and for a moment, the mask of the war bride slipped. He saw a flicker of something else, guilt. "You knew," Jace said. "You did not come here because of a joke. You came for the key." "I came because my brother is going to die," Sarah said, her voice hard. "The High Council was going to execute him for a failure on the frontier. They gave me a choice. Secure the peace anchor, secure you, or watch him bleed out in the public square. I chose him. So I am just salvage to you, Jace said, stepping back. Just a part you need to grab to fix your problem. I was told you were at the door, Sarah said. A way to control the gates. I did not expect. She hesitated, looking at him, at the grease on his face and the fear in his eyes. I did not expect you to be real. Before Jace could answer, the door behind them hissed. How touching, a smooth voice echoed from the entrance. They spun around. Standing in the doorway was a man in a shimmering synth silk suit. He had the polished, manufactured look of a career politician. Hovering over his shoulder was a chrome camera drone, its red recording light blinking. Behind him stood two heavy combat droids, their weapons raised. Senator Krell sends his regards, the man said, smiling a smile that did not reach his eyes. I am Envoy Silas, and I must say this is a PR nightmare waiting to happen. A human boy and a vampire bride conspiring in the dark. The optics are terrible. Get out, Sarah said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Now, now, Lady Vale, Silas said, stepping into the room. We are here to help. The senator wants to offer you protection. Both of you, the station is unsafe. There are rumors of a bounty. Silas tapped his datapad. A projection appeared in the air between them. It was a kill-on-sight order. The image was Sarah's face. The sponsor was House Vane, her own people. Traitor bride, Silas read. Accused of conspiring with human radicals to destabilize the Dominion, the bounty is 50 million credits. Every mercenary in the sector is loading their weapons right now. A lie, Sarah hissed. Vane is purging me to clear the board. It does not matter if it is a lie, Silas said. It matters that everyone believes it. Come with us. Mr. Rourke, the senator has a secure facility. We can annul this silly marriage, extract the genetic data safely and send Lady Vale back to her people in a box. It is the only way you survive. Jace looked at the envoy. He looked at the combat droids. Then he looked at Sarah. She was tense to spring, but she was outgunned. If she fought, they would kill her. If he went with Silas, he would be a lab rat for the rest of his short life. You are right, Jace said. The optics are terrible. He grabbed a heavy data crystal drive from the rack next to him and hurled it, not at the envoy, but at the holographic table's power coupling. Crash. Sparks showered the room as the table exploded. The light died instantly, plunging them into pitch blackness. Run, Jace yelled. He did not have to tell her twice. Sarah moved like a phantom. He heard the whistle of air as she moved, the crunch of metal as a droid was impacted. Blaster fire erupted, lighting the room in strobe flashes of blue plasma. Jace dove for the door, staying low. This way! The waste chutes! He scrambled into the corridor, Sarah right behind him. A laser bolt scorched the wall next to his ear, melting the steel. The waste chutes! Sarah shouted as they sprinted down the hallway. That is your plan? You want to live or you want to smell nice? Jace yelled back. They rounded a corner and Jace slammed his hand onto a maintenance lever. A circular hatch in the floor hissed open, revealing a dark, vertical shaft that smelled of sulfur and decay. Jump! They dropped into the dark just as the corridor behind them filled with corporate security troops. The fall was disorienting. The gravity dampeners in the waste shaft were erratic, designed for trash, not people. They tumbled through zero-gravity pockets, surrounded by floating debris, broken drone parts, solidified sludge, and scraps of metal. Jace flailed, grabbing a handhold on the shaft wall to stop his spin. Break! Grab the ladder rungs! Sarah caught a rung with one hand, her body swinging gracefully to a halt. She looked up, high above, Flashlights beamed down the shaft. "They are sealing the sector," Sarah said. "I can hear the blast doors closing." "Martial law," Jace said, looking at his datapad. "Station Command just issued a code black for public safety. They are locking us in a kill box." "We need a ship," Sarah said. "We have a ship," Jace said. "The Hound is in Bay 4, but between here and there is 3 miles of hostile station security, bounty hunters, and angry corporate ops." "Then we move fast," Sarah said. "Lead the way. Husband." They climbed down, exiting the shaft into the sub-basement levels where the cargo rails ran. These were automated maglev tracks that moved heavy freight containers through the station's spine. The tunnels were vast, dimly lit by orange caution strobes. Massive containers whizzed by on magnetic rails at 80 miles an hour, creating gusts of wind that tore at their clothes. "We have to ride one," Jace said, pointing to a parallel track. "That line goes straight to the docking ring." "Jump onto a moving magnetic sled," Sarah said flatly. "Is your species always this suicidal?" "Only when we are dating vampires," Jace said. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1. A container roared toward them. Jace sprinted alongside the track, gauging the speed. He leaped, his fingers scrabbling for the grip bar on the side of the metal box. He caught it, the momentum nearly wrenching his arm from its socket. He swung his legs up, clambering onto the narrow ledge between the container and the rail. He looked back. Sarah did not scramble. She timed her jump with mathematical precision, landing lightly beside him as if she were stepping off a curb. They crouched on the speeding container, the wind roaring in their ears. The tunnel lights blurred into streaks. "You are surprisingly adequate at this," Sarah yelled over the wind. "I grew up in these tunnels," Jace shouted. "We used to surf the mag lines for fun." "Fun," Sarah repeated, shaking her head. "Human stupid joy." The ride was short and violent. As the container neared the docking ring switch point, the brakes shrieked. "We have to jump off before it enters the scanning checkpoint," Jace warned. "There is an airlock override on the left wall. Aim for the platform." They leaped from the slowing container, rolling across a metal gantry. Jace slammed into a railing, groaning. Sarah landed on her feet, sliding to a stop. She dragged him up. "Move! The checkpoint sensors will have picked up our mass." They jammed themselves into a small emergency airlock just off the main cargo bay. Jace hit the door seal, and the heavy iron wheel spun shut, locking them in a space no bigger than a closet. The silence was sudden and deafening. They were pressed together in the cramped dark, the only light coming from the red LED on the door control. Jace could feel the heat radiating from Sarah's armor. He could hear his own heart hammering against his ribs like a frantic fist. He leaned his head back against the wall, sliding down until he was sitting on the floor. "Okay, we are close. Bay 4 is just past the turbine hall." He was shaking. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving him cold and trembling. Sarah knelt in front of him. Her face was unreadable in the red light. She reached out and took his wrist. Her hand was cool, her skin smooth as polished stone. But the moment she touched him, Jace felt a shockwave go through his system. It was not pain. It was a rush of cold electricity, an intense vibrating awareness that made his breath hitch. Sarah froze, her pupils dilated, swallowing the red of her irises until her eyes were black pools. She inhaled sharply, her nostrils flaring. "You are so loud," she whispered. "What?" Jace managed to say. "Your pulse," she said. Her thumb traced the vein on the inside of his wrist. "Your heat, the chemical spikes of your fear. It floods the air. It is like hearing a scream in a library." She leaned closer. Jace saw the hunger in her expression, Not a monster's mindless hunger, but an addict's desperate need. She looked at his neck, then back to his eyes. "The instinct is to silence it," she confessed, her voice trembling slightly. "To stop the noise, to drink until it is quiet." Jace stared at her. He should have been terrified. He was terrified, but he was also angry. And beneath that, he felt a strange magnetic pull toward her, a gravity he could not explain. He did not pull his hand away. Instead, he leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "I am not food," Jace said. His voice was steady, though his hands shook. "And I am not a quiet library. I am a person. If we are going to do this, if we are partners, you do not look at me like I am a meal. You look at me like I am the guy saving your life." Sarah stared at him. The blackness in her eyes receded, the ruby red returning. She blinked, as if waking from a trance. She looked down at his wrist, still in her grip, then slowly released him. "You are right," she said. She sat back on her heels, creating a few inches of distance. "I apologize, the proximity. It is difficult. I have been fasting to keep my mind sharp for the negotiations, and it seems that was a mistake." She looked at him, and her expression softened. It was a look of assessment, clinically precise but strangely respectful. "You hold your ground well, Jace Rourke. Most men would have begged." "I am too tired to beg," Jace muttered. He rubbed his wrist where she had touched him. The skin still tingled. "So, marriage terms. We need ground rules." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "You wish to negotiate a contract in an airlock while we are being hunted?" "Best time for it," Jace said. "Rule 1, no biting without a signed permit in triplicate." A faint smile touched Sarah's lips. "Agreed. Rule 2, you do not die. It would be administratively inconvenient." "I will try my best," Jace said. "Rule 3, if we get out of this, you explain everything. The key, the aurora, everything." "If we get out of this," Sarah said solemnly, "I will tell you the name of every star in the Vale sky. I vow it by the blood in the void." "A simple okay would have worked," Jace said, standing up. "Let's go steal my ship back." They burst out of the airlock and sprinted across the turbine hall. The station was in chaos. Alarms were blaring on every frequency. They reached Docking Bay 4. The Hound sat there, looking ugly and beautiful. But the clamps were locked on her landing gear, and a squad of corporate security was setting up a heavy repeater cannon at the bay entrance. "I will handle the guards," Sarah said. "You free the ship." She did not wait for an answer. She moved into the open, drawing the attention of the squad. "Gentlemen," she called out, "you are in my way." As the guards opened fire, Sarah vanished into a blur of motion. She used the verticality of the bay, running up the side of a cargo container, flipping over the plasma bolts, and dropping into the midst of the squad like a grenade. She did not kill them. She dismantled them. A broken rifle here, a shattered knee there. It was efficient, brutal, and fast. Jace sprinted for the manual release console on the wall. He jacked his datapad into the port. Come on, override code!" The clamps on the Hound clanked open. "Sarah, move!" Jace yelled. Sarah knocked the last guard unconscious with the hilt of her dagger and sprinted for the ship's ramp. They scrambled inside, Jace slamming the airlock button behind them. "Cockpit!" Jace yelled. Throwing himself into the pilot's seat, he flipped the startup switches. The engine groaned, sputtered, and then roared to life. "Computer, get us out of here, full thrust!" The ship's AI voice, scratchy and irritable, filled the cabin. Authorization recognized. "Welcome back. Jace, you look terrible. Launching in 3, 2. The Hound blasted out of the dock, shearing off a piece of the bay door as it went. They shot out into the vacuum. the stars spinning wildly as Jace fought the controls. "We are clear," Jace laughed, a hysterical sound. "Warning," the computer interrupted. "Ghost interference detected. Systems unstable." "What?" Jace checked the sensors. The radar screen was awash with static. "Incoming!" Sarah shouted from the co-pilot seat. A missile was trailing them, but it was not a standard heat seeker. It was small, dark, and it moved erratically, twitching like an insect. It slammed into the hull of the Hound, but it did not explode. It latched on. "Leech missile," Jace yelled. "It is hacking the drive." The lights in the cockpit flickered. Then, voices started coming through the comm speakers. Not static. Voices. Whispers. "Give him up. He is the key. Open the door." "It is a psionic transmitter," Sarah said, clutching her head. "They are broadcasting a neural disruptor through the ship's hull. It is trying to paralyze us." Jace felt it, a pressure in his skull, a sudden wave of nausea and confusion. His hands slipped on the yoke. "I can't steer." "Hold on," Sarah gasped. She unbuckled her harness. She staggered toward the engineering panel on the bulkhead. She ripped the cover off the main interface. "What are you doing?" Jace slurred, fighting the gray fog in his brain. "Sinking," Sarah said. "I can override the signal but I need to connect directly." She slashed her palm with her dagger and slammed her bleeding hand onto the fiber optic coupling. The blood tech in her veins surged into the ship. The cockpit lights turned a blinding red. Sarah screamed, a sound of pure agony. The Hound shuddered violently. Outside, the Leech missile sparked and exploded, rejected by the sudden surge of alien biocode in the ship's system. The whispering stopped. The fog cleared from Jace's mind. "Control restored," the computer chirped. Jace stabilized the ship, pushing the throttle to max. They punched through the orbital traffic layer, leaving Port Acheron behind. He looked back. Sarah was slumped on the floor, her back against the bulkhead. She was shaking violently. Her skin was gray, the glowing red of her eyes dim and flickering. "Sarah." Jace engaged the autopilot and scrambled out of his seat. He knelt beside her. "Sarah, are you okay?" "Too much," she whispered. Her teeth were chattering. The interface, it drained, energy reserves, empty. She looked like she was dying. Her body was consuming itself to recover from the massive output of power. She needed fuel. She needed blood. Jace looked at her. He saw the predator. Yes, but he also saw the woman who had just screamed in pain to save his life. He saw the person who had honored his boundaries in the airlock. He made a choice. He rolled up the sleeve of his flight suit. "Here," Jace said. He extended his arm. Sarah looked at the bare skin, then up at his face. Her eyes widened. "No, Jace, no! I could kill you." "You won't," Jace said. He was terrified, but his voice was firm. "You vowed, Rule 2, I do not die." Sarah stared at him. Her resistance was crumbling. The hunger was a physical force radiating off her. "Trust me," Jace whispered. Sarah reached out. Her hand trembled as she held his forearm. She did not strike like a snake. She leaned in slowly, giving him every second to pull away. She didn't. She pressed her mouth to his wrist, a sharp, stinging pinch, followed immediately by a strange, numbing warmth. Jace gasped, his head falling back against the wall. It was not painful. It was overwhelming. He felt a sudden, intense rush of emotion that wasn't his own. He felt a profound, aching loneliness. He felt fear. He felt a fierce, burning protectiveness. He was feeling her. He looked down. Sarah's eyes were closed, her hand gripping his arm not to hold him down, but to anchor herself. She was drinking carefully, sipping like it was a sacred thing. The sensation was intimate in a way that made his face flush. It was like being seen, really seen, from the inside out. He knew, in that moment, that she could taste his fear, his courage, and the weird, confusing attraction he felt for her. After a few seconds, an eternity, Sarah pulled away. She gasped, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. The color had returned to her cheeks. Her eyes were bright, burning with a new intensity. She looked at him, and Jace felt a phantom echo of her satisfaction in his own chest. "You," Jace breathed, holding his arm. The wound was already closing, sealed by her saliva. "I can feel you," Sarah whispered, looking at him with wide, shocked eyes. "Jace, the blood, it bridged us. I can feel your heartbeat in my own chest." "Yeah," Jace said, rubbing his chest. "I can feel you too. You are really stressed out." Sarah let out a short, startled laugh. "I am a fugitive war bride running from my own house. Yes, I am stressed." The computer chimed. Hyperspace jump vector calculated. Departing system in 10 seconds. Jace pulled himself up, offering a hand to Sarah. She took it. This time, the touch was not electric. It was solid, warm, connected. "Ready to run?" Jace asked. Sarah squeezed his hand. "Ready." They strapped in as the stars outside stretched into infinite lines of light. The hound vanished into the jump, leaving the dead moon and the angry fleets behind, carrying two fugitives who were now bound by something far more dangerous than a treaty. Karth Vale was a world that tried to kill you simply by existing. It was a mining planet in the expansion zone, a jagged ball of rock wrapped in perpetual storms. The atmosphere was a churning, bruised purple, lit by constant flashes of lightning that struck the surface with the force of artillery shells. The hound shuddered as it descended through the cloud layer. Rain, heavy with metallic particulates, drummed against the hull like handfuls of gravel. "Steady," Jace said, wrestling with the yoke. "Wind shear is 60 knots. Sarah sat in the co-pilot seat. She was not looking at the instruments. She was looking at him. Since the moment on the ship when she had tasted his blood, the air between them had changed. It was no longer empty space. It was a conductive wire. Jace could feel a dull thrum of anxiety at the back of his mind that was not his own. It was hers. And he knew she could feel the sharp spikes of his adrenaline. It was distracting, intimate, and terrifying. "There," Sarah pointed, "on the canyon to the east. The interference from the magnetic ore will hide our signature." Jace banked the ship, sliding it into a deep fissure in the planetary crust. He set the hound down on a ledge of black basalt, hidden beneath an overhang that shielded them from the orbital patrols. "Welcome to Karth Vale," Jace said, powering down the engines. "Capital of the black market, home of the desperate, and apparently the best place to find a traitorous archivist." They geared up. Jace holstered his kinetic pistol and threw on a heavy storm coat. Sarah checked the seals on her armor. She looked elegant and deadly, a shard of obsidian against the grime of the ship. "This archivist," Jace asked as they lowered the ramp. "You trust him?" "I trust his greed," Sarah said. "Balthazar collects secrets. He was the one who drafted the subclauses of the Treaty of Orion. If anyone knows what the blood clause actually means, it is him." They stepped out into the gale. The wind howled, smelling of sulfur and wet stone. They made their way to the settlement known as Crater Dome 6. It was a pressurized city built inside a massive mining pit, covered by a translucent energy shield that rippled under the rain. Inside, it was a neon-drenched labyrinth of bazaars, gambling dens, and flesh trade parlors. The bazaar was a sensory assault. Holographic advertisements screamed for attention. The air smelled of frying spices and ozone. Humans, Veil, and cybernetic hybrids pushed through the narrow streets. Jace kept his head down, pulling his collar up. Sarah walked with a hooded cloak over her armor, but she still moved like royalty in a gutter. People parted for her without knowing why. Balthazar operates out of the old refinery, Sarah murmured, her voice resonating in Jace's earpiece. Keep your mind quiet. Jace, you are projecting nervousness. I am nervous, Jace whispered back. Half the people here have a price on their heads and the other half collect them. They reached the industrial district, where the neon gave way to rust. The old refinery was a looming skeleton of pipes and pressure tanks. The entrance is through the coolant tunnels, Sarah said. They entered a service hatch. The tunnel was dark, slick with moisture. As they walked deeper, the air grew cold. Then, Jace saw it. Leaking from a cracked pipe was not steam, but light. A familiar sluggish red mist curled along the floor. The aurora, Jace said, freezing. It is leaking here, Sarah said, her voice tight. The barrier between the dimensions is thin on this world. That is why the Veil nobles come here. They trade in dust from the other side. The red mist seemed to notice them. It swirled, forming shapes that looked like grasping hands before dissipating. The machinery around them groaned, the metal gears turning backward for a second before correcting. It hates us, Jace said. It knows us, Sarah corrected. They pushed through the haunted tunnel, arriving at a heavy blast door. Sarah knocked, a complex rhythm of metallic taps. The door hissed open. Inside, the room was a cathedral of data. Servers hummed in tall stacks, cooling fans whirring. In the center sat Balthazar, a Veil elder so old his skin looked like parchment stretched over wire. He was plugged into the mainframe by a series of data cables at the base of his skull. Lady Seraphine, Balthazar rasped, his eyes remaining closed. And the human pet, you have made quite a mess of the sector. We need the addendum. Balthazar, Sarah said, stepping forward. The blood clause, what does it do? It costs, Balthazar said. Information is not free. Sarah placed a heavy credit chip on the table. 50,000, corporate bearer bonds. Balthazar smiled, disconnecting a cable from his neck. He opened his eyes. They were entirely white, blind to light but seeing everything in the data stream. The blood clause, he mused. You think it is a peace treaty? A way to bind two warring species through marriage? He laughed, a dry, rattling sound. Oh, you tragic children. It is not a bridge. It is a key. He tapped a console. A holographic display flared to life. It showed a schematic of a starfold gate, the massive rings used for interstellar travel during the war. The gates are not machines, Balthazar said. They are biological tiers in reality, stabilized by psionic resonance. To open a closed gate, or to seal a wild one, you need a specific frequency, a resonance. The image changed to show a double helix, one strand human, one strand Veil. The Rourke line carries the genetic catalyst, Balthazar explained, pointing a withered finger at Jace. The Veil war brides carry the psionic amplifier. Combined, under the stress of a bond, they create a living resonance key. You two are not married. You are a circuit. The blood clause forces you together so the High Council can use you to control the gates. Jace felt the blood drain from his face. Use us? How? By plugging you in, Balthazar said simply. Like a battery. Usually, the process burns the couple out in a few months, but think of the tactical advantage. The ability to open a war corridor anywhere in the galaxy. Priceless. Jace turned to Sarah. She was staring at the hologram, her face unreadable. Did you know? Jace asked. I knew about the key, Sarah said softly. I did not know it was terminal. There is more, Balthazar said. He swiped the air, and a new file appeared. It was a dossier on Sarah. Lady Seraphine Vale. Designation: War Bride Class Alpha. Training: diplomacy, seduction, assassination, psychological binding. Balthazar looked at Jace with pity. She was not sent to marry you, boy. She was sent to break you. Her training is designed to make you love her, to make you dependent, so that when they hook you up to the machine, you do not fight. She is a honey trap with a pulse. Jace stepped back. He looked at Sarah, at the beautiful, lethal woman who had saved his life, who had drunk his blood. Is it true? Jace asked. His voice was quiet, but it echoed in the silent room. Sarah turned to him, and she did not flinch. Yes. The seduction? Jace asked. I said yes? All of it? It is my function, Sarah said. I was bred for it. I was trained to find the target's emotional weakness and exploit it to ensure compliance. So I am just a target, Jace said. The betrayal hit him harder than a physical blow. It wasn't just the danger, it was the fact that he had started to believe in the partnership. He had started to believe the intimacy in the ship was real. You were a target, Sarah said. She took a step toward him, ignoring Balthazar. When I landed, you were a mission, but Jace, listen to me. Don't, Jace snapped. Don't use the voice, the diplomatic voice. I am using my own voice, Sarah shouted. The sudden loss of control startled them both. Yes, I was trained to use you, but I am choosing not to. I am defying my house. I am defying my nature. Why do you think I am starving myself? Why do you think I warned you about the senses? She stopped, her chest heaving. You make me feel human choices are possible. I am not manipulating you, Jace. I am terrified because for the first time in my life, I do not know what I am doing. I am just falling. The silence stretched between them, heavy and electric. Jace looked at her, searching for the lie, but the bond between them hummed with a raw, jagged honesty. He could feel her fear. It matched his own. He stepped closer. The anger in his chest twisted into something else, something hot and desperate. Prove it, Jace whispered. Sarah looked at him. She didn't speak. She closed the distance, her hand rising to touch his face. It was not the calculated touch of a seductress. It was tentative, shaking. Jace leaned in. The world outside, the storms, the bounty hunters, the war, faded. There was only the magnetic pull of her presence. Their lips were inches apart, the air crackling with the energy of the bond. Crack, thoom. The heavy blast door blew inward. Explosives. Jace and Sarah were thrown apart by the concussion. Smoke filled the room. Coalition peacekeepers, a voice roared through a megaphone. Down on the ground. Peacekeepers, Jace coughed, scrambling for cover behind a server rack. They are not peacekeepers, Balthazar yelled, unplugging himself frantically. They are the cleanup crew, the peace faction and the war faction. They are the same people. They sell the weapons and the treaties. Bullets shredded the air. Sarah moved instantly, flipping a table to create a barricade. We need the location of the reliquary, Sarah shouted to Balthazar. Where is the machine? The data core. Balthazar threw a heavy, glowing cube to Jace. It is in there. The Starfold reliquary. It is in the dead system. Go! A laser bolt caught Balthazar in the chest. The old archivist crumpled, his white eyes staring up at the ceiling. Balthazar! Jace yelled. He is gone, Sarah said, grabbing Jace's collar. We have to move. They are blocking the exit. Jace checked his scanner. We are pinned. The ventilation, Sarah pointed up. But we need a distraction. I have an idea, Jace said. But you are going to hate it. Try me. We have to go to the gala. The governor's gala was the only place in Crater Dome 6 that pretended the world wasn't ending. It was held in the spire, a tower that pierced the top of the dome, looking down on the squalor below. Jace and Sarah had escaped the ambush through the steam tunnels, emerging near the service entrance of the spire. They had acquired clothes from a high-end delivery drone. Now, they stood in the ballroom. It was a sea of velvet, silk, and sharp teeth. The Vale nobility of Karth Vale mingled with human corporate executives. A string quartet played music that sounded like math. Jace wore a shimmering black suit that was tight in the shoulders. He felt like a fraud. Sarah wore a gown of liquid silver that left her back bare, exposing the scars of her augmentation ports. She looked like a queen of winter. "Keep your head up," Sarah whispered. "You are the consort of a high house. If you look weak, they will eat you, literally." "I am trying," Jace muttered through a fixed smile. "But these shoes are torture." "We need to get to the roof," Sarah murmured. "The Hound can extract us from the landing pad, but we have to cross the floor without alerting security." They stepped onto the dance floor. Sarah took his hand. Her touch was cool, grounding. "Follow my lead," she said. 1, 2, slide. 1, 2, slide. Jace stumbled. "I am a pilot, not a dancer." "It is the same thing," she whispered, her face close to his. "Momentum, gravity, trust." They moved into the throng. Jace began to find the rhythm. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her. She was performing, smiling at the right people, nodding with the perfect degree of condescension. But through the bond, he felt her razor-sharp focus. She was counting guards. She was calculating angles. "You are amazing," Jace whispered. "Terrifying, but amazing." "Posture, husband," she corrected gently, her hand sliding up his shoulder. "And do not stare at my throat. It is rude to look at the menu when you are not buying." Jace laughed, a genuine sound that drew a few eyes. "Well, well," a voice cut through the music. The crowd parted. A woman stepped forward. She was Vale, tall and striking, wearing a gown of deep crimson. Her eyes were green fire. "Lady Ilara," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a chill. "Seraphine," Ilara purred. "We heard you had gone native, but I did not expect you to bring your pet to the governor's ball." Ilara circled them. "Look at him. He smells of grease and fear. You wear him like a trophy, darling. But we all know the truth. You are wearing love like armor. You think it protects you? It just gives us a place to aim." The insult was public. The room went silent. Sarah did not attack. She did not snarl. She simply squeezed Jace's hand, a silent signal. "Hold." "Ilara," Sarah said, her voice ringing clear and bored. "You mistake efficiency for sentiment. This man is not a pet. He is a key. And unlike your last 3 husbands, he is still alive. Perhaps you should ask me for lessons in competence, rather than critiquing my wardrobe." The crowd murmured, a ripple of amusement. Sarah had won the social duel, but Ilara smiled. "A key? How useful. Then you won't mind if we take him?" Ilara snapped her fingers. The string quartet stopped. The doors slammed shut. Half the guests in the room reached into their jackets and pulled out weapons. "Ambush," Jace said. "Again!" "Go!" Sarah shouted. She kicked the nearest table, sending it crashing into Ilara. Chaos erupted. Jace and Sarah sprinted for the grand staircase. Plasma bolts scorched the air. They returned fire. Sarah with throwing knives she had concealed in her hair. Jace with the small pistol he had taped to his ankle. They burst onto the roof landing pad. The wind was screaming up here, the storm raging against the dome shield. Where is the hound? Sarah yelled. On remote. Jace tapped his cufflink controller. She is coming in hot. But the door behind them burst open. A squad of assassins, led by a heavy combat cyborg, charged onto the roof. They were trapped at the edge of the platform, a 300-foot drop to the city below on one side, a kill squad on the other. Surrender the data core! The cyborg boomed. Sarah stepped in front of Jace. She was glowing with blood tech energy, but she was exhausted. He could feel her reserves draining. No, Jace said. He looked at the heavy ventilation fan next to them, a massive industrial exhaust port that vented the dome's excess pressure. Sarah, Jace shouted over the wind. Do you trust me? Yes. Grab my belt. Jace pulled a magnetic grapple gun from his tuxedo pocket, his one piece of pilot gear. He fired it at the overhanging support beam of the dome. The hook caught. Oh, hold on. Jace aimed his pistol not at the assassins, but at the control panel of the ventilation fan. He fired. The panel exploded. The safeties failed. The massive fan reversed polarity. Instead of blowing air out, it created a sudden, violent vacuum breach, sucking everything on the platform toward the intake. The assassins screamed as they were dragged across the slick metal. The cyborg clawed at the floor, but the pressure differential was too strong. They were tumbled away, pinned against the safety grating of the intake. Jace and Sarah were yanked off their feet, but the magnetic line held. They swung out over the drop, dangling in the storm, the wind tearing at them. That was your plan? Sarah screamed, clinging to his waist. It worked, Jace yelled. The hound roared up from the clouds below, its cargo ramp open. Jace timed the swing, hit the release, and they tumbled onto the metal deck of the ship. Jace hit the ramp close button. Punch it! The ship shot away, leaving the chaos of Karth Vale behind. They did not go far. They landed the hound on a drifting asteroid in the belt, powering down to run silent. In the small medical bay of the ship, the lights were dim. Sarah sat on the exam table. She was shivering. The silver gown was torn, stained with soot. But the real damage was on her skin. Strange, inky shadows were rippling across her arms and neck. It looked like living tattoos moving under the surface. It is the instability, Sarah whispered, her teeth chattering. I use too much power. My blood tech is rejecting the interface. What do I do? Jace asked, his hands hovering, afraid to touch her. Just clean the wound, she said, pointing to a laser graze on her shoulder. The nanites will handle the rest, if I can rest. Jace grabbed the med kit. He worked in silence, cleaning the burn, applying the dermal patch. His hands were steady now. Sarah watched him. Her eyes were dull, the red light fading to a soft ember. I am tired, Jace, she said softly. He paused. I know. We have been running for 3 days. No, she said, I am tired of being valuable. I have spent my whole life being a negotiation tactic, a weapon, a key. I do not know what it is to just be. She looked at him, and her mask was completely gone. She looked young, terrifyingly young for someone who had seen so much death. You are not a tool on this ship, Jace said firmly. He finished the bandage. You are the captain. Well, co-captain. I am still the pilot. Sarah smiled, a weak, fleeting thing. Co-captain, I like that. She shivered again, a violent spasm that racked her frame. The shadows on her skin flared. I am cold, she admitted. The instability, it affects my thermal regulation. She hesitated. She looked at the narrow bunk in the corner of the med bay. Then she looked at him. Jace, will you stay? Jace looked at her. Stay? I need an anchor, she said, her voice barely a whisper. My senses are drifting. If I am alone, I might slip into the feral state. I need to feel something constant, something real. Proximity, Jace said. Yes. He did not argue. He turned off the main light, leaving only the amber emergency glow. They lay down on the narrow bunk. It was too small for two people to lie apart, so they lay back to back. Jace could feel the cold radiating off her. He pressed his back against hers, sharing his warmth. He could feel the hard plating of her spine, the tension in her muscles. He lay there, staring at the bulkhead, his heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm. Sarah? Yes? We are going to fix this, the reliquary, the key. We are going to break the machine. I know, she whispered. She shifted slightly, pressing closer to him. Her hand moved back, her fingers brushing against his. She didn't grab his hand. She just let her fingers rest against his. A point of contact. Good night, Jace, she said. Good night, Sarah. Jace closed his eyes. He could feel the bond humming between them, not a jagged noise anymore, but a low, steady note. It wasn't just practicality. He knew it. She knew it. It was devotion. And as they drifted into sleep, fugitives in the dark, Jace realized that the joke was over. He wasn't playing anymore. He would burn the galaxy down before he let anyone turn her back into a weapon. The slipstream of hyperspace was a tunnel of shifting violets and grays, a cocoon that separated the Hound from the rest of the galaxy. Inside that cocoon, for 3 days, there was no war. There was only the hum of the engine and the quiet rhythm of two people learning to fit together. Jace sat in the pilot's chair, his feet propped up on the console. A bag of synthesized cheese puffs, bright orange and chemically perfect, sat open on his lap. You are telling me, Sarah said, examining a puff with the suspicion of a bomb disposal expert, that humans consume this voluntarily. It is 90% air and 10% industrial dye. It is not dye, Jace said, tossing one into his mouth. It is flavor dust, and it is the height of culinary evolution. Try it. It is stupid joy. You need more stupid joy in your life. Sarah hesitated, then placed the puff on her tongue. She frowned, her brow furrowing as it dissolved. It tastes like ozone and regret. Exactly, Jace grinned. Now, pass the data pad, my turn for the lesson. They had fallen into a routine. By ship cycle day, Jace taught Sarah how to be human, or at least, how to relax. They watched terrible movies where the science was wrong and the explosions were too big. They debated the merits of spicy noodles versus sweet rations. He teased her about her posture, which never slumped, even when she was sleeping. By ship cycle night, Sarah taught him how to survive her world. Review, Sarah said, sliding into the co-pilot seat. She looked elegant even in the oversized flight suit she had borrowed from his locker. If a veil noble touches their left earlobe while speaking to you, what does it mean? It means they are offering a trade, Jace recited. Incorrect, Sarah said sharply. It means they are signaling a sniper. You are dead. Great, Jace sighed. Your culture is exhausting. Does anyone ever just scratch an itch? No, Sarah said. Itch is a weakness. We do not show weakness. She paused, then reached into the bag and took another cheese puff. Except, perhaps for this flavor dust, it is strangely addictive. Jace watched her. The red glow of her eyes had softened over the last few days. The terrifying war bride was still there, coiled beneath the surface, but she was laughing more. The bond between them, that strange, invisible wire, hummed with a steady warmth. He could feel her amusement before she smiled. He could feel her hunger, and she could feel his fatigue. It was peaceful, until the comms panel lit up with a priority override code. Incoming transmission. The ship's AI announced, "Wideband frequency. Origin Coalition Central Command." Jace sat up, the cheese puffs forgotten. "Put it on screen." The holographic display flickered to life. It was not a person. It was a warrant, a rotating 3D image of Jace's face, next to a high-resolution scan of Sarah in her battle armor. Wanted for high treason and bioterrorism. Jace Rourke, traitor to the Coalition, accused of stealing classified Omega-level weaponry. Seraphine Vale, enemy combatant, biohazard warning, level 5, do not approach. Reward, 10 million credits. Civilian cooperation is mandatory. Biohazard, Sarah read, her voice flat. They are telling people I am a plague. They are turning everyone against us, Jace said, gripping the armrests. Every dock hand, every fuel station attendant. We can't stop for supplies, then we can't hail anyone. Sarah looked at him. Through the bond, Jace felt a spike of cold guilt from her. I have destroyed your life, she said softly. You can never go back to Port Acheron. You have no home. Jace. Jace reached out and took her hand. He didn't look at the screen. He looked at her. I have a home, Jace said. It is a rusty bucket of bolts called the Hound. And currently, the co-pilot is a vampire princess who eats my snacks. I am exactly where I want to be. Sarah squeezed his hand, hard. You are a fool, Jace Rourke. I know, Jace said. Now strap in. We are coming up on the coordinates, the dead system. The system did not have a name on any star chart. It was a graveyard of gravity. The Hound dropped out of hyperspace and the sensors immediately screamed. The star at the center of the system had collapsed eons ago, leaving behind a brown dwarf that smoldered with dull, bruising light. Orbiting the dead star was the reliquary. It was not a station, it was a cathedral, a structure of jagged black stone and frozen light, vast and silent, floating in the void. It looked like a temple built by giants and then abandoned to the dark. Energy readings are off the scale, Jace whispered, looking at the readings. But it is not electrical. It is biological. The red aurora, Sarah said. Look. Inside the cockpit, the air began to shimmer. The red mist bled through the walls of the ship, curling around their boots like dry ice. The consoles flickered. The silence of space was replaced by a low, rhythmic thrumming sound, like a massive heart beating miles away. The machine is awake, Sarah said. It senses the key. They docked manually, forcing the Hound's airlock to seal against the ancient stone port of the reliquary. They moved quickly, weapons drawn, stepping into the belly of the beast. The interior was vast. The walls were lined with statues of faceless figures, their hands reaching toward the ceiling. The air was cold and smelled of ozone and old blood. This way, Jace said. He didn't need the map. He could feel it, a pull in his gut, a magnetic north that tugged at his very DNA. They walked through great halls where the red aurora drifted like curtains. The machines whispered, not in words, but in static that sounded like voices debating in a locked room. He is here. The door, the bride, the lock. They reached the central chamber. It was a circular room, domed with transparent aluminum that looked out at the dying star. In the center of the room stood a device. It was beautiful and terrible, a ring of floating obsidian shards, rotating around a core of pure, blinding red light, the Starfold heart. It is a gate engine, Sarah breathed, holstering her weapon. Balthazar was right. It is not just a portal, it is a tier generator. This machine can rip a hole in space anywhere in the galaxy. It could drop a fleet over Earth or the Vale homeworld in seconds. Jace approached the control pedestal. There were two interface panels. One was a standard genetic scanner. The other was a psionic receptor plate. Human and veil, Jace said. It takes 2 hands to turn the key. And 2 wills. A voice boomed from the shadows. Lights flooded the chamber, blinding them. Jace spun around, raising his pistol, but an invisible force slammed him to the ground. A gravity well. He pinned to the floor, unable to move, his lungs compressed. Sarah moved to strike, but a containment field snapped into existence around her, a cage of hard light. She slammed against the barrier, hissing. From the shadows, 2 figures emerged. Admiral Kane wore the pristine white uniform of the Coalition Navy. He was an older man, his face a mask of disciplined cruelty. Beside him walked High Lord Vane, Sarah's superior, his robes sweeping the floor, his eyes burning with triumph. Behind them stood a platoon of elite soldiers, mixed units, human marines and Veil blood guards standing shoulder to shoulder. The peace faction and the war faction, Jace wheezed, fighting the gravity pressing on his chest. You are working together. Business is business, Mr. Rourke, Admiral Caney said, stepping over Jace to look at the Starfold heart. War is expensive, but controlled war? War where we own the supply lines and the transit routes? That is infinitely profitable. You are traitors to your own people, Sarah spat, testing the walls of her cage. We are visionaries, High Lord Vane corrected smoothly. The Dominion and the Coalition are stagnant. We will unite them under a new order. And you, my dear Seraphine, are the linchpin. Vane gestured, and the gravity holding Jace eased slightly, just enough to let him breathe, but not stand. The Starfold heart requires a living circuit, Vane explained. A bonded pair. We tried artificial keys, they burned out. We need the real thing, a Rourke and a war bride. We will never help you, Jace gasped. You misunderstand, Admiral Caney said. We do not need your permission. We need your biology. He nodded to a technician. Prepare the neural link. We are going to force the bond. They were thrown into a holding cell carved from the black rock of the station. The door was a shimmering energy field. Jace sat on the floor, rubbing his bruised ribs. Sarah paced the small space, her energy frantic. Jace could feel her panic through the bond. It tasted like copper and ash. They are going to violate our minds, Sarah said, her voice shaking. The forced bond. It strips away the self. It merges the consciousness until there is nothing left but a command loop. We will be tools, living batteries. She stopped pacing and looked at Jace. Her eyes were wild. I cannot let that happen to you, she said. Sarah, calm down, Jace said, standing up. No, she grabbed his shoulders. There is a way out. If one of us is dead, the circuit cannot be completed. The heart remains dormant. She drew a small, concealed spike from her boot. I can do it. My physiology allows for a quick cessation. If I am gone, you are useless to them. They will let you go. Are you insane? Jace knocked the spike from her hand. It clattered across the stone floor. You think I am going to let you kill yourself to save me? It is the tactical choice, Sarah shouted. I am a weapon, Jace, expendable. You are not a weapon to me, Jace yelled back. He grabbed her face in his hands, forcing her to look at him. You are the woman who eats my cheese puffs. You are the person who saved me in the airlock. I am not letting you go. Jace, please, she whispered, tears forming in her red eyes. I am terrified. I do not want to disappear into that machine. Then we don't, Jace said fiercely, that we beat them to it. How? We are unarmed. The bond, Jace said. They want to force us to connect, they want to wire us together. Fine. But we do it on our terms and we do it now. We occupy the space before they can. Sarah stared at him. A full bond? Jace, it is permanent. It is not just sharing feelings, it is sharing souls. You will know everything. My crimes, my darkness. You will never be alone in your head again. Good, Jace said. I get lonely easily. He pulled her closer. The air in the cell seemed to thicken. The ambient energy of the reliquary pressed against the walls, reacting to their intent. How do we do it? Jace asked. Trust, Sarah whispered. Absolute surrender. And a name. She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. A war bride has a public name, but we have a true name, a soul frequency. If I give it to you, I belong to you, and if you accept it, you belong to me. Give it to me, Jace said. Sarah closed her eyes. She took a breath that shuddered through her whole body. Then she spoke a word. It was not a word in any human language. It was a sound that vibrated in Jace's bones. Irreversible. The moment the name left her lips, the world dissolved. Jace did not feel pain. He felt an avalanche. He felt the cold of the Vale homeworld. He felt the sharp, agonizing training of a child assassin. He felt the crushing weight of duty, and beneath it all, he felt a blazing, blinding light, her hope, her desire to be more than a knife. And she felt him. She felt the warmth of the sun on a salvage deck. She felt the simple, stubborn pride of a man who fixed broken things. She felt his love for her, vast and terrifying and undeniable. Their heartbeats synced. Thump, 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 thump. The red aurora outside the cell flared white. The bond snapped into place, not as a chain, but as a fortress. Jace opened his eyes. He saw Sarah, but he also felt her, as clearly as he felt his own hand. Arathea, Jace whispered. I am here, she answered. Her voice echoed in his mind, clear as a bell. The energy field of the door hissed. Time is up. Admiral Kane's voice came from the corridor. Bring them to the chamber. Jace and Sarah stood apart, but they moved perfectly in sync. They shared a look, no words needed. Ready? Jace thought. Ready, Sarah's voice replied in his head. Let us break their toy. They were dragged back into the central chamber. The Starfold heart was spinning faster now, the hum rising to a scream. Strap them in, Vane ordered. The guards shoved them toward the control pedestals. Jace and Sarah did not fight. They let themselves be manhandled. Compliance, Caney sneered. I expected more resistance. We are just tired, Admiral, Jace said, his voice calm. Hook them up, Vane commanded. Technicians attached the neural shunts to their temples. Initiating forced sync, a technician announced. 3, 2, 1. The technician threw the switch. Pain should have followed, a violation of the mind. Instead, the machine screamed. The Starfold heart flared violently. The red light turned jagged, shifting to gold, then purple. The feedback loop slammed into the technicians, sending them flying backward in a shower of sparks. What is happening? Vane yelled, shielding his eyes. The readings are spiking. The connection, the technician screamed. It is already active. They are already bonded. The signal is rejecting the override. Jace looked at Vane and smiled. It was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You wanted a key? Jace shouted, his voice amplified by the psionic energy of the room. You got one. Now, Sarah thought. Now, Jace answered. They grabbed the control pedestals. They didn't try to shut the machine down. They drove it. Gravity shift, Jace commanded. The Starfold heart obeyed the Rourke bloodline. The artificial gravity in the room inverted instantly. Admiral Caney and the human soldiers floated helplessly into the air, flailing. Jace and Sarah, anchored by the magnetic boots of their suits, which Jace had remotely engaged seconds ago using the Hound's interface, stayed planted. Kill them, Vane shrieked. As a High Lord, he had his own gravity dampers. He drew a sword of crackling energy and lunged at Sarah. Sarah did not draw a weapon. She didn't need to. She was the weapon. She moved with a speed that blurred the eye. She ducked under Vane's swing, the blade sizzling past her ear. She placed her palm on his chest plate. "Pulse," she whispered. She channeled the excess energy of the Starfold heart through her arm. A shockwave of kinetic force blasted Vane backward. He slammed into the stone wall with the force of a meteorite, his armor shattering. Meanwhile, Jace was fighting the Admiral. Caney was floating, trying to aim his pistol. "Computer!" Jace yelled at the room. "Atmospheric vent, Sector Alpha." The machine listened. A vent opened above Kane's head, sucking the air and the Admiral up toward the ceiling ducts. Caney fired wildly, the shots pinging harmlessly off the floor. "Sarah, the core!" Jace yelled. "It is unstable," Sarah shouted back. Her mind voice was urgent. The feedback loop cracked the containment. "The heart is going critical." The rotating rings of the machine began to wobble. The red light was turning black. The sound was deafening, a tearing noise that hurt the teeth. "We have to go!" Jace grabbed Sarah's hand. They ran. They sprinted out of the chamber, dodging falling debris. The gravity in the hallways was shifting randomly, up, down, sideways. They jumped over pits of sudden zero-G, ran along walls, moving as a single organism. They reached the airlock. The Hound was waiting. They scrambled inside. "Launch!" Jace screamed. The ship detached just as the reliquary began to crumble. The black stones fractured, pulled apart by the tidal forces of the malfunctioning heart. As they burned away from the dead star, Jace checked the rear sensors. The reliquary did not explode. It imploded, but it didn't vanish. The Starfold heart was still active, spinning wildly in the wreckage, tearing a jagged, bleeding wound in the fabric of space. "We did not stop it," Sarah said, staring at the screen. "We just broke the lock. Look at the readings." Jace pointed. "That rift, it is growing. It is a war corridor, but it is wild. Anything can come through it." "And the countdown," Sarah noted, pointing to a timer on the console. "The instability will reach the subspace network in 12 hours. When it does, every gate in the galaxy will open at once." Jace slumped in his chair. "So we have 12 hours to save the universe." Sarah reached over and took his hand. Her touch was different now. He could feel her pulse in his own fingertips. "We have 12 hours, she agreed. "And we are the only ones with the key." Jace looked at her. "Part 5 is going to be rough, isn't it?" "Excruciating," Sarah said, a small, fierce smile playing on her lips. "But we are together." "Together," Jace echoed. He pushed the throttle forward, and the Hound raced into the dark, carrying the two most dangerous people in the galaxy. The nebula was a bruise on the face of the galaxy, a swirling expanse of ionized gas and crushed debris that sensor arrays could not penetrate. To the Coalition Navy, it was a navigational hazard. To the Veiled Dominion, it was a blind spot. To the people living inside it, it was the only safe place left. Jace Rourke guided the Hound through the purple fog, relying less on his radar and more on the woman sitting beside him. "Left," Sarah murmured, her eyes closed. 3 degrees. There is a gravity well behind the gas cloud. Ilm. Jace adjusted the yoke without hesitation. The ship drifted past a jagged asteroid that would have torn their hull open. "You are better than a nav computer," he said. "I am sensing the anxiety of the traffic controller," Sarah said, opening her eyes. "He is terrified we are going to crash into his greenhouse." The fog parted, revealing the enclave. It was not a station, it was a scar tissue of metal. Dozens of ships, freighters, corvettes, mining rigs, had been welded together into a chaotic, sprawling hive. Human airlocks connected to Veil biodomes. It was ugly, fragile, and impossible. "The raft," Jace whispered. "I thought it was a myth." "It is where the broken things go," Sarah said. "Outcasts, deserters, people who refuse to choose a side." They docked at a converted heavy lifter. As the ramp lowered, they were met not by soldiers but by a crowd of weary faces. Humans in patched flight suits stood next to Veil in stripped-down armor. There were no flags here, only the smell of recycled air and desperate hope. A tall human woman with a cybernetic leg stepped forward. "I am Kaylin," she said. "We heard the broadcast from the reliquary. You two made a lot of noise." "We broke the lock," Jace said, "but the door is still swinging open." "We know," Kaylin said. "We can feel the tremors in the subspace layer. Come inside, before the galaxy catches fire." The command center of the raft was a hollowed-out cargo bay filled with scavenged monitors. Kaylin introduced them to her co-leader, a Veil elder named Vex who was missing an arm. "You are anomalies," Vex said, studying them with tired yellow eyes. "But you are not the first." Vex tapped a console, and a series of old, grainy holograms appeared. They showed couples, human and Veil, from decades past. "The peace marriages," Sarah said, recognizing the ceremonial robes. "I was taught they were propaganda, myths." "They were experiments," Vex corrected, "engineered by the Shadow Council. Every time the war grew too costly, they would bond a pair to stabilize a sector. But true unity is dangerous. If humans and Veil realized they could coexist, the empires would lose their power. Power is built on fear, and fear requires an enemy. So every time a couple became too real, they were erased. Accidents, assassinations, buried history." "They killed them," Jace said, looking at the smiling faces in the hologram. "Because they actually fell in love?" "Because love makes you uncontrollable," Kaylin said. "And now you have the key. The Starfold heart is wild. The Council is terrified. Half our people here want you to use the heart to strike the Dominion capital. The other half want to bomb Coalition headquarters." "We are not bombing anyone," Jace said firmly. "We are sealing the breach. Permanently. If you seal it, you destroy the only leverage we have," Vex argued. "With that weapon, we could force a truce." "A truce built on a gun to the head is not peace," Sarah said. "It is just a hostage situation." The debate raged for hours. Jace stepped out for air, his head pounding. He found a viewing port looking out at the nebula. He pulled up his datapad. He shouldn't have checked, but he did. The Coalition newsfeed was a deluge of hate. Traitor pilot Jace Rourke, failed salvager turned terrorist. There were pictures of his mother's small repair shop on Mars. Someone had spray-painted collaborator across the windows. Jace felt a sick weight in his stomach. His name was a punchline. His family was suffering because of a joke he made in a bar. "It is heavy, is it not?" Sarah stood beside him. She was looking at her own feed. The Dominion channels were broadcasting sermons calling her the whore of the void, a blood traitor who had sold her genetic purity to a scavenger. "They are hurting my mom," Jace said, his voice cracking. "She just fixes toasters. She has nothing to do with this." "They want you to break," Sarah said. She reached out, her fingers brushing his. "They want you to feel shame so you will accept their offer when it comes." "What offer?" "The one where you sell me out for a pardon," Sarah said quietly. Before Jace could answer, a small ball rolled across the deck and hit Sarah's boot. A group of children, human and Veil hybrids, were peeking from behind a crate. A little girl with Veil eyes but human hair pointed at Sarah. Are you the princess? The girl asked. Sarah blinked. The mask of the war bride slipped, replaced by genuine confusion. No, I am not a princess. You look like one, the girl insisted, but scary, like the bad princess. Jace snorted. Sarah crouched down, her armor creaking. She looked the child in the eye. I am not a princess, little one. Princes and princesses start wars. I am something much worse. What? The girl whispered. I am paperwork. Sarah deadpanned. I am the long, boring document that makes the soldiers go home. The kids giggled. It was a light, bubbling sound that had no place in a war zone. Jace watched Sarah interact with them, stiff at first, then softening. She let them touch the glowing lights on her gauntlets. She showed them a shadow trick with her fingers. For a moment, she wasn't a weapon. She was just a person crouching on a dirty deck, trying to make a child smile. Jace felt a swell of affection so strong it almost knocked the wind out of him. He realized then that he wasn't just fighting for survival. He was fighting for this. For the boring, quiet, stupid joy of living. The peace of the Enclave was shattered 2 cycles later. Unidentified vessel on approach, the comms officer shouted. It is flying a white flag, Dominion transponder. Jace and Sarah rushed to the docking bay. The ship that landed was sleek, silver, and shaped like a dagger. The ramp lowered, and a lone figure descended. She was tall, wearing the crimson armor of a high house. Her hair was black, braided with gold wire. Nyx, Sarah whispered. You know her? Jace asked, hand on his pistol. We trained together, Sarah said. She is my oldest friend. Nyx stopped at the bottom of the ramp. She did not draw a weapon. She looked at the rebels with disdain, then locked eyes with Sarah. Seraphine, Nyx said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and cold. You look terrible. Rebellion does not suit your complexion. Nyx, Sarah nodded. State your business. I bring terms from the High Council, Nyx said. She glanced at Jace. Private terms. Anything you say to me, you say to him, Sarah said. Nyx raised an eyebrow. Very well. The council offers a pardon. Full reinstatement of your house. Your brother, Valus, will be released from custody. All you have to do is dissolve the bond and return to the Dominion. And Jace? Sarah asked. The human? Nyx shrugged. He will be ignored. He can stay here in the trash heap. We only want the key. We only want you. It was a good offer. It was the logical offer. Jace stepped forward. And if she refuses? Then we will burn this nebula until there is nothing left but ash, Nyx said pleasantly. Sarah looked at her friend. You are reciting a script, Nyx. I can hear the cadence. Who is holding your leash? Nyx's expression flickered. For a second, the arrogance vanished, replaced by a desperate, terrified warning. Do not be stupid, Sarah. They have Valus, they have my sister, they are not playing. Take the deal, leave the human. It is the only way to survive. Survival is not enough anymore, Sarah said. I decline. Nyx closed her eyes. I feared you would say that. She turned to leave, but as she walked past Jace, she paused. Check your datapad. Human. The Coalition has its own offer. Nyx boarded her ship and departed. Jace looked down at his pad. A secure message had arrived. It was from Admiral Kane's office. Mr. Rourke, we can wipe your record. We can rebuild your mother's shop. We can give you a colony permit for a paradise world. 10 million credits. Just disable the Veil's armor and step away. We will handle containment. Be smart. She is a monster. You are a man. Come home. Jace stared at the screen. 10 million credits. Immunity. A life where he wasn't hunted. He looked up. Sarah was watching him from across the bay. She wasn't using her senses to read him. She was just waiting. She respected him enough to let him choose. Jace walked over to her. He held up the pad. "They offered me 10 million, Jace said. Sarah stiffened. "That is a lot of money for a salvage pilot." "Yeah," Jace said. "It is." He dropped the pad on the floor and crushed it under his boot. "But the exchange rate is terrible," Jace said. "I would have to trade everything that matters." Sarah let out a breath she had been holding. She stepped closer, her eyes shining. "I would have understood, Jace. It is a logical choice. Love isn't a joke anymore, Sarah," Jace said, taking her hand. "And it isn't a calculation. It is a grown-up decision. And I decided." Sarah gripped his hand hard enough to bruise. "Then we have a problem. Nyx was not just a messenger. She was a distraction." "What do you mean?" "I felt it when she left," Sarah said, her voice turning to ice. "She was projecting grief. They didn't just threaten my brother. They moved him." The intelligence came from the rebel network. Valis, Sarah's younger brother, was being held at the Black Bastion, a Dominion fortress built into a hollowed-out asteroid on the edge of the sector. "He is the leverage," Sarah explained as they huddled over the tactical map. "They know I won't seal the Starfold hard if my brother is inside the blast radius. They are using him as a human shield." "Then we go get him," Jace said. "The Bastion is a meat grinder," Kalen warned. "It has overlapping shield grids and a garrison of blood guards." "We do not need to fight the garrison," Jace said. "We just need to get in, grab the kid, and get out. We need stealth." "I can cloak our approach," Sarah said. "The bond, it allows me to amplify my dampening field. If Jace pilots in sync with my heartbeat, we can slip past the sensors." It was a suicide mission. They left within the hour. The approach to the Black Bastion was a nightmare of spinning debris and automated killsats. Jace flew the hound with his eyes half closed, letting Sarah's mind guide his hands. Left, drift, slow, now burn. They moved like a shadow, slipping through the blind spots of the fortress's radar. They latched onto the outer hull of the asteroid, near a waste venting port. "Suits on," Jace said. "We are going for a walk." They entered the fortress through the maintenance shafts. The interior was a dizzying vertical city of spinning habitat rings. Gravity shifted from ring to ring. They moved silently, taking out guards with synchronized precision. Jace used a stun baton. Sarah used nerve pinches. They didn't kill. They couldn't afford the noise. They found the detention block in the central core. Valis was there, strapped to a chair, looking battered and thin. Standing over him was a Dominion torturer, a massive veil with cybernetic claws. Sarah saw her brother, and the red haze of the blood rage descended. Jace felt it through the bond, a tsunami of pure white-hot murder. Sarah didn't just want to save her brother, she wanted to tear the torturer apart slowly. She wanted to paint the walls. Sarah stepped into the room, her daggers drawn. The air temperature plummeted. "Sarah, wait," Jace whispered. "He touched my blood." Sarah hissed. Her eyes were black voids. "He dies." She launched herself. The torturer turned, but he was too slow. Sarah severed his cybernetic arm in one stroke. She kicked him to the ground, placing her blade against his throat. "Sarah!" Jace shouted. Sarah froze. Her hand was shaking. The blade bit into the veil's skin. "Do it," the torturer sneered. "Show them you are a monster. Prove the coalition right." "Sarah, look at me," Jace said. He didn't step closer. He just spoke through the bond. "I am here. I feel you. This isn't you. You are paperwork, remember? You are the boring document. You are not this." Sarah gasped. The blackness in her eyes receded, revealing the red. She looked at Jace, then at her terrified brother, then at the man beneath her blade. She withdrew the knife. "I am not your executioner," she said coldly. She pistol-whipped the torturer, knocking him unconscious. "I am your obsolescence." She cut Valis loose. The boy collapsed into her arms, sobbing. "I have you," Sarah whispered, stroking his hair. "I have you." "We have company," Jace yelled. Alarms blared. The stealth was broken. "The hangar is 5 levels up," Jace shouted. "We have to move." What followed was a blur of zero-gravity combat. They sprinted across the spinning rings, jumping over gaps where the floor fell away into the asteroid's core. Dominion guards poured into the atrium. Laser fire filled the air. "Jace, take Valis," Sarah shouted. I will hold them." "No!" Jace grabbed Valis with one arm and fired his pistol with the other. "We leave together or we don't leave." They reached the airlock where the Hound was docked. Jace slapped the override. A heavy blast door began to close, cutting them off. "Slide!" Jace yelled. They threw themselves under the closing door. Jace dragged Valis through. Sarah rolled after them, her armor scraping sparks against the metal. The door slammed shut inches behind her heel. They scrambled into the ship. "Go! Go! Go!" Jace threw himself into the pilot's seat and punched the thrusters. The Hound tore itself free from the asteroid, engines screaming as they burned hard for open space. Behind them, the fortress batteries opened fire. Flak burst around them, shaking the ship like a toy. "Shields are failing," Sarah yelled from the co-pilot seat. "Hold on!" Jace spun the ship, diving into the debris field of the asteroid's ring system. He danced between rocks, using the terrain as cover. They broke into clear space and engaged the jump drive. The stars stretched, and they were gone. In the quiet of the jump, Jace went to the med bay. Sarah was bandaging Valis's wrists. The boy was sleeping, sedated. Sarah looked up. She was exhausted, her face pale, but her eyes were clear. "You stopped me," she said softly. "Back there. I was going to kill him. I wanted to." "I know," Jace said. "I felt it." "You saw the monster," Sarah said, "and you didn't run." "I saw the anger," Jace corrected, "and it was justified, but it wasn't the plan. We are breaking the cycle, remember? If we act like them, the war never ends." Sarah stood up. She walked over to him and rested her forehead against his chest. She didn't say anything. She just breathed, matching her rhythm to his. "We got something else from the fortress," Sarah said after a moment. "While I was freeing Valis, I downloaded the torturer's logs." She pulled a data chip from her belt. "It contains the communication records between Admiral Caney and High Lord Vane, audio files, bank transfers, proof that they orchestrated the Starfold malfunction, proof that they are colluding to restart the war for profit." Jace took the chip. It was small, but it felt heavy. "This is the nail in the coffin," Jace said. "And there is one more thing," Sarah said. The logs revealed the location of the Starfold Heart's primary control node. It is not in the reliquary. The reliquary was just the engine, the ignition switch. The core activation site is the Halo Station. "The Halo Station?" Jace asked. "That is in neutral space. It is the broadcasting hub for the entire galactic network." "Exactly," Sarah said. "They built the control room inside a TV station, hiding in plain sight." Jace smiled. It was a sharp, dangerous smile. "So," Jace said, "we have the proof, we have the location, and we have a galaxy that is watching us." "Part 6, Sarah whispered. "Part 6, Jace agreed. "Let's go put on a show." He kissed her forehead, a soft, lingering touch. Then he turned to the cockpit. The Hound adjusted its course, aiming for the center of the stage. The galaxy was holding its breath. Across the civilized sectors, the silence was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. In the neon canyons of the coalition cities, riots were breaking out in the food queues. In the high spires of the Veiled Dominion, noble houses were sealing their gates. Sensing a shift in the political wind, fleets were mobilizing on both sides of the border, their engines burning bright against the dark, waiting for the order to ignite a war that had been bought and paid for by invisible men. But the center of the storm was not a battlefield. It was a broadcasting station. The Halo station was a colossus. It was a ring structure 30 miles in diameter, orbiting a calm white dwarf star in neutral space. It was constructed of white ceramic and transparent alloy, giving it the appearance of a halo made of bone and starlight. It was the throat of the galaxy, the central hub for the hyperwave network, where every news feed, every market report, and every diplomatic decree was routed before being beamed to the masses. Two small figures in vacuum suits drifted toward the station's maintenance ring. Magnetic grapples engaged. Jace Rourke whispered over the comms. Touching down in 3, 2, 1. Their boots connected with the white hull. There was no sound, only the vibration running up through their souls. We are inside the sensor blind spot. Sarah's voice came through, clear and calm in his mind. The bond between them was wide open, a steady stream of tactical data and emotional grounding. The broadcast core is 40 levels down. We have 20 minutes before the summit begins. They moved to the airlock. Jace bypassed the keypad with a decryption tool he had cobbled together from the Hound's spare parts. The door slid open. They were inside. "Plant the nodes," Jace said. They moved through the service corridors like ghosts. They did not speak. They didn't need to. When Jace spotted a camera, Sarah felt it and looped the feed before he could even point it out. When Sarah sensed a guard patrol approaching around a corner, smelling their boredom and their coffee, Jace knew instantly and pulled them into a ventilation shadow. They clamped small black boxes onto the main data trunks. These were not bombs. They were truth drives. Node Alpha set, Jace thought. Node Beta set, Sarah replied. They reached the central server room. It was a forest of blinking lights and humming cooling towers. This was where the narrative of the galaxy was controlled. "This is it," Jace said, jacking his datapad into the master terminal. "Once I execute this script, the nodes will hijack the signal. Every screen from Earth to the Dominion core will stop playing the news and start playing our evidence." "Do it," Sarah said, standing guard at the door. Her senses extended like a tripwire web. Jace's fingers flew across the keys. He was not just a pilot anymore, he was an insurrection. In the grand chamber of the Halo station, the air was cold and smelled of expensive perfume. The summit was being broadcast live to trillions. On a raised dais sat the architects of the crisis. Admiral Caney looked grave and responsible in his white uniform. High Lord Vane sat beside him, radiating predatory grace. "We face a tragic necessity," Vane was saying, his voice smooth as oiled glass. "The terrorist Jace Rourke and the traitor Seraphine Vale have destabilized the peace. They possess a weapon that threatens us all. The Dominion has no choice but to mobilize our fleets for containment." "The Coalition agrees," Admiral Caney added, looking into the camera drones. "For the safety of our citizens, we are declaring a state of martial law across the border systems. We must secure the Starfold heart before these radicals use it." It was a perfect performance, a lie told with the weight of authority. Then, the screens behind them flickered. Static cut through the feed. A harsh, tearing sound echoed through the chamber. The face of the Admiral froze, pixelated, and was replaced by a grainy audio waveform. Profit margins on the new war routes are estimated at 400%. It was Kane's voice, recorded in secret. The audience in the chamber gasped. Kane stood up, his face pale. Cut the feed, technical difficulties. But the feed did not cut. It switched to a video. It showed High Lord Vane standing in the Starfold reliquary, laughing as he ordered the sabotage of the containment field. Let the corridor open. Let the chaos spread. Fear is the only currency that matters. The audio switched again. It was the voice of the torture master from the Black Bastion, confirming the kidnapping of Sarah's brother on Vane's orders. This is a deep fake, Vane roared, his composure shattering. This is AI manipulation, a trick by the terrorists. Suddenly, the massive holographic display in the center of the room changed. It didn't show a video. It showed a stream of raw code. Complex cryptographic keys. A voice cut over the speakers. It was Jace. Those are the treaty keys. Jace's voice rang out, projected from the server room 40 levels down. They are the digital signatures from the original peace accords. Every independent system has a copy in their archives. Run the comparison. The signatures on these orders match the admirals and the high lords. The math does not lie. In embassies across the galaxy, independent verifiers ran the code. The lights on their consoles turned green. Verified, verified, verified. The lie evaporated. In the grand chamber, the illusion of order collapsed. Senators began shouting. Guards looked at their commanders with uncertainty. They are in the server room, Caney screamed into his wristcom. Kill them and activate the Starfold heart. Now! If we cannot control the narrative, we will force the war. They are coming, Sarah said. She didn't need to look at the door. She felt the intent of the kill squad swarming toward them. The broadcast is looping, Jace said, pulling his interface cable. The galaxy knows the truth. Now we just have to survive it. They are activating the heart remotely, Sarah said, her head tilting as she listened to the station's internal data stream. They are brute-forcing the gate open. They want to create a catastrophe so big that people forget the scandal. The control chamber is at the top of the ring, Jace said. We have to physically cut the hard line. Then we run, Sarah said. They burst out of the server room. The corridor was filled with corporate security troops. Fire! A sergeant screamed. Jace and Sarah moved. They did not move like two people. They moved like water and stone. Sarah took the low line, sliding across the polished floor, her kinetic dampeners flaring as she deflected plasma bolts. Jace took the high line, using his mag boots to run along the wall, firing his stun pistol with precise, rhythmic shots. Left, Jace thought. Sarah dodged left before the grenade even landed. Right, Sarah projected. Jace dropped from the wall, ducking under a swing from a stun baton. They fought their way to the turbo lifts. The station was shaking. The Starfold heart, located in the distant sector but linked to this station's control grid, was tearing open. The red aurora was beginning to bleed into the reality of the Halo station. The white walls were staining crimson. The elevator is cut, Jace said. We have to climb the shaft. 30 levels, Sarah said. Fast. They ascended the maintenance ladder, hand over hand, their movements synchronized. The air was getting hot. The station's gravity began to fluctuate as the dimensional rift widened. Jace, Sarah said, her voice tight with exertion. If we do not make it, we make it, Jace grunted, hauling himself up. If we do not, she insisted, I need you to know I am not doing this for the treaty. I am not doing it for the galaxy. I know, Jace said. He looked down at her, her eyes burning red in the gloom. You are doing it because you are stubborn. I am doing it because you are mine. she said, fierce and low. Not by law, not by hunger, but because I choose you. Every day. I choose you too, Jace said. Now let's go break their machine. They reached the top level, the apex control chamber. They kicked the doors open. The room was chaos. The red aurora was swirling like a hurricane inside the dome. High Lord Vane and Admiral Caney were there, standing at the master console, trying to stabilize the rift they had torn open. You are too late, Vane screamed over the roar of the energy storm. The gate is opening. The war is inevitable. Vane drew his energy sword. He looked magnificent and terrifying, a lord of ancient blood. Deal with the human, Vane ordered his personal guard, 4 elite blood knights. I will finish the girl. The knights advanced on Jace. Jace didn't back down. He didn't look at Sarah. He just sent a single thought through the bond. Go. Sarah launched herself at Vane. This was not a duel. It was an execution of authority. Vane swung his sword, a blow that would have cleaved a tank. Sarah didn't block. She flowed around the blade, stepping inside his guard. She didn't strike him. She grabbed his wrist, the wrist of his sword hand. You speak of purity, Sarah shouted, her voice amplified by the room's acoustics. You speak of the Veil Code, yet you sell your own people for human credits. She twisted his wrist. Bones snapped. Vane howled, dropping the sword. Sarah kicked him back, but she didn't pursue. She turned to the Blood Knights who were circling Jace. Look at him, Sarah commanded, pointing at Vane, who was clutching his broken arm and whimpering. Look at your High Lord. He is not fighting for the Dominion. He is fighting for his bank account. He is a merchant in a lord's armor. The knights hesitated. They had seen the broadcast. They saw the cowardice in Vane's eyes. I am a war bride of House Vale, Sarah declared, her eyes blazing with royal authority. I command you, stand down. The lead knight looked at Vane, then at Sarah. He deactivated his weapon. He stepped aside. Vane stared in horror. Mutiny! I will have you all executed. You have no army left. Vane, Sarah said coldly. You have only your lies. Across the room, Jace was sprinting for the console. Admiral Caney pulled a pistol and fired. A bullet grazed Jace's arm, spinning him around. Jace gritted his teeth. Ignoring the pain, he tackled the Admiral and they crashed into the console. Caney was stronger, desperate, clawing for Jace's throat. You are just a pilot, Caney spat. You are nothing. I am a salvage pilot, Jace wheezed, and I know how to scrap a wreck. Jace didn't try to punch Kane. He reached into his belt and pulled out a magnetic disruptor puck, standard gear for destabilizing engine cores. He jammed it directly into the master interface slot. Eat this, Jace said. The console screamed. The disruptor fried the control protocol instantly. Sparks showered the room. Caney was thrown back by the feedback arc. The link is cut, Jace yelled. I killed the control signal. It is not enough, Sarah shouted, running to his side. She pointed out the viewport. The Starfold heart, miles away in the void, was not shutting down. It was pulsing violently. The tear in space was widening, glowing a sickly, infected purple.